So before we start, let me give a brief introduction about what exactly is a carbon market. So back in 2006, UNFCCC, which is a body of UN for climate change, they decided to incentivize uh, reduction of carbon emission by creating a mechanism called CDM. So since 2006, there has been a market that has been created to incentivize organizations, individuals, and industries who are working towards the reduction of or removal of carbon emissions. And for that matter, they're giving out carbon credits to them. So let's begin by understanding what is the situation at the moment. So as we know, there has been an unprecedented level of GHG emission happening all around the world from different kind of industries. For India alone in 2021, there has been an estimation of 2.44 billion ton of CO2, of which MSME sector accounts for 25% emissions. And according to the Paris Agreement, if we do not sustain our global temperature within the 1.5 degree levels, we will have to face adverse climate change, and that will in fact affect all kinds of industries, the supply chain and value chain altogether. To give a perspective about how the textile industry has been impacting this global warming, as per 2019 figures, the global textile industry has been growing at a rate of 6.5% year over year. For that growth, the textile industry is using 1,074 billion kilowatt hour of electricity every year. And as we know, most of our electricity is coming from thermal power plants. So with that, saying that, the textile industry is contributing somewhere around 6 to 8% to the total carbon emissions happening in the world right now, which is equivalent to 1.7 billion tons of CO2 annually. And if we have to embody it into a materialistic figure, it would come to 0.45 ton, which is 450 kilo of carbon dioxide emitted for 1 meter of cloth that is being prepared in the industry. So how do we assess this emission? How do we tackle this problem? First, what we need to do, we have to measure our emissions. Second, we have to reduce it. After reduction, the residual emissions should be offsetted, and then we should report the emissions as per standards. Now we'll dive deep into it. So by measuring your emissions, I mean by doing carbon accounting of your industry, where scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 will be covered. In scope 1, the direct emissions are covered. In scope 2, purchased emissions are covered. And in scope 3, all the indirect emissions are covered. Then comes the second step. How do we reduce our emissions? We can adopt for efficient machineries, improve technology, advance tools and mechanisms, electric vehicles, green energy such as solar, wind, and hydro. All these kind of solutions can be adopted to reduce your emissions. Then comes the offset your emissions. How do we offset our emissions? For example, the textile industry is using some kind of fossil fuel to power their industry. So they can move from fossil fuel to biofuel. In that way, they can reduce their emissions and create offsets. Secondly, they can also avoid the emission by adopting renewable energy for captive consumptions, such as solar and wind. And lastly, we can remove our emissions by investing in projects for forestry and afforestry projects, or agricultural projects for that matter. And how does this offset works? So for example, textile industry is using X amount of fossil fuel, and that amount is resulting into 100 ton of carbon dioxide emissions per year. Now that textile industry decides that, okay, we will go for rice husk boilers for our steam generation. So they move into rice husk powered boilers, and they emit somewhere around 40 to 50 tons of CO2. So the difference which they are reducing right now, the 50 ton of CO2, for that matter, they will get 50 carbon credits from the registry. There are various registries such as Vera, Gold Standard, GCCS, CRI, and then UCR. There are several other registries all around the world. So project which wants to register their project into any kind of registry, they can register there. We are there to help them in understanding how the mechanism will work, how the process will flow, how they will be able to offset their carbon emissions and claim credits. Now, what are the potential carbon credit projects that can textile manufacturer can adopt? Firstly, they can shift from grid energy to renewable energy for captive consumptions. Secondly, they can use biomass instead of coal or diesel for steam and electricity generation. Third, they can use biogas for steam and electricity generation. They can collect waste from the nearby districts or the state and create biogas plants and use the biogas to generate steam and electricity. For that, they can get carbon credits. If any industry which has a fleet of vehicles such as trucks and tempos, they can transform them into EV vehicles or transit into EV fleet, and for that they can get carbon credits as well. Then comes the production part where the procurement happens from the cultivators, cotton cultivators. They can make agreements with the cotton cultivators for improved agricultural practices such as less use of water in cotton cultivation, less use of nitrogen fertilizers in cotton cultivation, use of organic fertilizer. These will improve the carbon sequestration potential of the soil and it will offset carbon. For that also they can get great amount of carbon credits. And second, lastly, it is the energy efficient buildings and infrastructure that the textile industry can adopt, and for that they can claim carbon credits as well. And lastly, any industry, regardless of where they operate, they can go for afforestation and reforestation projects for claiming carbon credits. So these are 7 ways where a textile manufacturer can invest or adopt to claim carbon credits. Now, what are the existing carbon offset projects that Indian textile industry manufacturers have adopted? There are several examples, but I will focus on these 4. One is Winsome Textile Industries from Himachal Pradesh. They have a 30 megawatt hydropower plant for their own energy consumption. So for that, they are generating somewhere around 80,000 carbon credits per year. Then there is Sri Santosh Garment, which I believe belongs to Tirupur Textile Cluster. They have windmill power plant project, which they are using to generate carbon credits and also using it for their captive energy consumptions. Then there is Renuga Textiles, again from Tamil Nadu. They have a co-generation power plant where they're using biomass, rice husk to be specific, to generate steam and electricity for their own consumption. Then there is Mangal Textile Mills from Gujarat, who is again using biomass fired boilers, and they're using rice husk and mustard stalks for captive steam consumptions. There are other industries as well, such as Tara Textiles from Delhi, who are again using rice husk for steam generation. There is Malwa Industry from Punjab using rice husk for captive consumption. Then there is Velathal Spinning Mills from Tamil Nadu, which is using windmill for electricity consumptions. So there are several examples that could be found in various registries where textile industry manufacturers are claiming carbon credits, which is adding to their revenue. And it is also helping them to offset their own other residual emissions. Now, the last part of your carbon journey is by reporting your emissions. When you have done your measurement, you have done your reductions, you have offset your residual emissions, you then go on to report your emissions. You have to select a standard, you have to compile all the data across all your verticals. You have to analyze it, strategize, just plan for the next year, how you're going to reduce further your emissions and publish the report. What else we can do? We can use efficient resources. We can go for organic supply chain. We can use zero discharge ETPs. We can use sustainable chemicals for our fabrics. We can adopt green technologies. Like I said, we can use biomass, biofuels, and renewable energy for that matter. Then we can develop a responsible supply chain wherein all the stakeholders in the entire supply chain are aware of the impact of their business on the climate, and they will take necessary steps to reduce their impact. Second, fourth is waste management program, where the waste what is being generated from the textile industries will be managed properly so that lesser impact will be occurred on the environmental or climate front. And then textile industries would come up with sustainable work policies to promote sustainable actions and mitigation programs. And within that, they should train their employees to be more responsible towards their action and towards the environment. And how, then let's know how it is significant for textile industry to go for carbon footprint or carbon credit for that matter. So firstly, the very first advantage which textile industry manufacturer can get is added line of revenue, or they can go for neutrality by offsetting their own credits. Second, when you go for green technologies, efficient technologies, your operational cost goes down. You get to identify all the loopholes in your processor, and you get to close those loopholes when you go for carbon projects. Then with the use of efficient machineries, the efficiency of operation increases automatically. Then there is a speculation of carbon tax being imposed in India in coming times. So by going adopting carbon credits or carbon footprinting strategies will help the industry to start plan for the upcoming carbon tax as well. For the industries who are into exports, they can showcase these projects, these measures, these mitigation actions for their buyers or maybe their clients, and with the help of those disclosures, they can gain business out of it. Then the textile industry who are into ESG commitments, these actions will help them achieve those commitments as well. And lastly, the industry which is working in the front of carbon footprint and carbon credit or sustainability as a whole, it will improve their brand image among the customers, and it will help them acquire more consumers in the market. So for this, NN has started a movement called Conscious and Continuous Change Towards Net Zero, where we spread awareness on net zero and sustainability within the industry, MSME sector to be specific, and we help them to become carbon neutral. We let them know about new technologies or innovations that is happening around the world and try to bring it to the Indian market. We also impart knowledge on the international regulations and standards that are changing and being developed in the world market, and which will help the industry to be upkept in the market. Then we also facilitate all the services and investments that a textile industry require to set up a carbon credit project as well. And then lastly, we promote all the best practices and case studies in our forums and all the events where we go for. So this is the end of my presentation. So I'm here to take up your questions.